Alright, this will be the reassembly of an iPhone 6 Plus charge port. Here we have our cable. This is a cable that I just removed. It's still fully functional. To go ahead and get this started, we're going to insert the 3.5mm headphone jack first. Once that's in, you can kind of position the mic into its correct position. Now, if you didn't transfer over the little rubber gasket, make sure you do that before you input this cable in. So stick it in and kind of slide it over a little bit into its correct spot. You can check on the bottom just to make sure it's lining up. If it's in there and it's fitting, that most likely means that it's in the correct spot. Make sure as you line up this charge port on the bottom here that you line up all the screw holes on it. That's kind of a guide to this. It does still have a little bit of adhesive on the bottom, so you may not be able to wiggle it too much, so make sure that as you're inputting it, you put it down in the correct spot. We're going to start with the two 3.5mm headphone jack screws first. That'll kind of hold the cable in place as we go ahead and put the other side in. Alright, we're going to go ahead and put the little piece in for the mic with the black piece to the left and the silver piece towards the right side. Just making sure that it was correct there. And then we're going to go ahead and put the screw in. This will kind of hinge it towards the charge port area and push the microphone into its correct spot. We then need to make sure that the charge port itself, that the 4 screws are lined up. We'll put these 4 screws in next. We'll go ahead and put the 2 bigger ones in first that are towards the interior middle portion of the charge port. Just kind of push down to line up all the screw holes here so we can put that screw right in place. With that done, that should line up the remaining 6 for you. I'm sorry, the remaining 5. Alright, it's 2 to go. We'll go ahead and put the next 2 in. These screw basically right into the metal frame, a little bit smaller screws. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit tricky to line the screw hole up. You may have to kind of push it around a little bit. Alright, with that done, we can go ahead and basically just push our cable back out, really making sure that everything lines back up. So there's some screw metal flanges on here that you want to make sure line up. So just use your nylon spudger to kind of go over it, make sure they're in the correct spot. Next, we'll go ahead and take the wire antenna cable and connect it back to the right of the charge port here. You want to make sure you do that before you put on the metal bracket for the remaining 2 charge port screws. That covers this portion up. Now this one can be a little bit tricky. It's kind of like a button on a pair of jeans. It just sits right on top and snaps into place. They are fairly easy to bend, so just be careful with it as you're pushing it in. With that done, we can go ahead and take our metal bracket and put it back in place with the charge port. Go ahead and put our 2 remaining screws in. Alright, now with that done, we have 1 additional screw to put into the right on top of the cable itself that goes right into the frame. We can go ahead and now take our loudspeaker. You can see the little bracket that I just took off. Now if the metal bracket has come off, you want to make sure you reattach that back onto the loudspeaker before you put it in place. Basically acts as a little holder for the wire cable. So let's go ahead and push that in the correct spot here. Just make sure the screw holes line up with the ribbon cable. Before you start screwing anything back together, make sure that all of them line up correctly. It's very hard to get the cable to move once the loudspeaker is on top of it. Now with that in its correct spot, I find it easiest to actually put a screw in first before we try to put the cable back into its correct spot. So we'll go ahead and do that first. We'll go ahead and put the bottom right hand screw in for the ribbon cable itself, and then the one for the loudspeaker to be next. Alright, now once that is completed, we'll go ahead and try to basically just push back this little piece of metal here at the top. It kind of acts like a hinge. And we'll push the cable into its correct spot. Now you can really put this in any way you want to, but I found this to be the easiest way to do it. Well, let's get the cable to lay in there nice and flat. And then we'll use our spudger here to just go ahead and press this cable back into its correct spot. We need to line up the screw holes again. We'll put the bottom one in first. It'll kind of act like a hinge. And let us push the top together to line up the screw holes there. Now it can be a little bit tricky to get this to line up correctly, so you can use your spudger as a wedge, or if you think you can get it to line up correctly. I'm going to tighten this down a little bit more, get that cable guide to not move at all once I have it lined up. Now we need to go ahead and put our vibration module back on. Now we see that on the left side of the vibration module there's a little place where the metal portion of this cable will clip right in. You want to line those up so it doesn't pinch or snag or damage the cable itself. Push the cable back so we can put the vibration module back in correctly. Make sure that the battery cable is out from underneath it as well. Now comes what I would almost consider the trickiest part of the entire thing. This little wire cable here at the top needs to clip back into its correct spot. There's not a lot of play on the cable. It's a little bit tricky to move around. So what I'm going to do next is put our screw in for the vibration module down here at the bottom. This will kind of hold everything in place while we try to finagle that wire cable into its correct spot. So it's not trying to line up properly, so I'm just going to use my spudger here to push against it while I insert the screw. Alright, so I'm just going to line it up here, try a different approach. Get my screwdriver ready with the screw correctly put on. Then we'll just wedge this in here again. A little bit better grip this time. And there we go. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and put this wire cable onto its correct spot here. So this is probably the trickiest part that I was talking about. It can be hard to get this to sit on top of the spot and then press down. You can damage this cable, so be very, very gentle. Once you get it lined up, it'll clip in just like I was saying, like a button fly on a pair of jeans. Getting it lined up. Just trying to press it right into place. See, it's still not wanting to go in for us. Perfect, I heard it snap in place for us, so that's exactly what we're looking for. Alright, the next step that we need to do is to go ahead and put in our additional screw for the vibration module. This is the one that goes right underneath the ribbon cable for the charge port. With that done, we can go ahead and reconnect our charge port cable to the logic board. Wiggle and snap this in. Alright. Now with that done, we can go ahead and start to reinstall our screen. Alright, so the next step is to take our screen and go ahead and take these ribbon cables and press them back in on top of their connectors. Now, this can be a little bit tricky if you've never done this before. You don't want to press very hard on them. Just try to line them up and give them a firm pressure. Hear them kind of click into place, but make sure you press down on both sides of the cable to make sure it's securely positioned. Sometimes the screen will mistouch or get ghosting if you don't put these down correctly for the touch screen. It can be a little bit tricky, so just line it up, wiggle it around a little bit if you need to, and then press down firmly but not extremely hard. Sometimes the cable's cut funny and it won't be exactly center that you'd think it would be on the cable itself. Now once I have them all connected, I just kind of run my finger over them all, make sure they're all pressed down nice and snug. Go ahead and take our metal shield here, put that back on top. Remember not to let the screen go more than about a 90-degree angle. You don't want to damage any of the cables that we just connected. So one trick that I use is basically take the screwdriver, position the screw on top of it, and then push it into the slot. That way you're not trying to fiddle with these little tiny screws and get them to go in. It's easier for me to do it this way. So take the screw, put it correctly on top of the tip of the screwdriver, and then put it in. Three more screws to go. Just one more. Excellent. Now the next step is to go ahead and reconnect our battery connector here. Just go ahead and press that down and take the metal shielding and put that right over the top of it. Need to put in our screws here at the bottom. Now you see my screen jump a little bit here. I had to basically stop the camera and mess around with the screws, and then it followed my own statement and got a couple of them mixed up. It took me a second to figure out which one went where. We have both of those back in. We take the top of the screen, we're going to slide it in towards the top of the device, and then press down on the sides and clip down as you go. Do each side, and make sure the bottom is nice and snug. The next step is to go ahead and put in our two pentalobe screws in the bottom of the phone. And again, nice and snug, but do not over tighten. These are easy to strip out. So take your time. Alright, there we go. We'll go ahead and power on the device here real fast. And that is how you replace a charge port on an Apple iPhone 6 Plus. If you do have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. I'll do my best to get to those and answer them. If you found the video helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. I'd appreciate that. If you want to see any future repair videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I try to come out with a couple a month. I do everything from high-end phones to maybe the lower or mid-range phones as well. I really appreciate you watching the video, and I hope to see you on the next one.